Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. This is Stuart Cohen from IGI CyberLabs and Nodeware. We'll get started in just a second with Tim, Coach, and myself talking about maturing your MSP business with cybersecurity and how you can evolve, how you can mature, and how you can scale with all of the small and mid-sized enterprises that'll be coming your way with IT and security requirements. We'll get started in just a second. Just waiting for some of the other attendees to get logged in. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Once again, this is Stuart Cohen from IGI CyberLabs. Thank you so much for joining us today. Before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping things specifically. As always, if you're familiar with the series that we do around the Cybersecurity Thought Leadership series, we want to make these interactive. We got some questions submitted in advance. As always, if you have some additional questions, please put them in the chat box or in the question box. We will do our best to get to all of those. Also, we have a LinkedIn events page, so if you want to go there, ask questions, get connected with your peers. We are also, for cybersecurity professionals, putting together a Slack channel that we've got a group of people on cybersecurity issues and news. We can make you a participant in that as well if you let us know. And as always, if you have a particular topic or a presenter that you would like to hear from as part of our ongoing series around cybersecurity thought leadership, please let us know that. And we will shortly be announcing a series that we're doing around building out the ecosystem with a group of our integration partners and a group of the integration partners that Gradient has put in place. We'll talk about that for a second today, and we'll be talking about how those partners together through APIs and through output gives you the ability as an MSP to not only leverage and increase your productivity, but also to streamline some of your solution offerings to be able to be more productive and lower your costs to your clients. So, and as always, the recording will be available on our YouTube account, and we will get that out to everybody as well. If we can go to the next slide. As far as upcoming sessions, we're very excited about the Gradient announcement we made earlier this week, where Nodeware is fully integrated into Gradient and the output is fully integrated in. So if you're running the billing system from Gradient, it now gives you the ability to take the output from Nodeware and simplify what you're doing from a billing standpoint per clients. That actual session with Gradient is next week on the 28th. We'd love to see everybody participating in that. We do have our monthly Nodeware live demo and peer Q&A session coming up next week as well. If you're interested in a demonstration, if you're interested in a proof of concept, we're happy to talk to you about that as well. That's on the 30th. And we've got a couple of great guest speakers that'll be there from the MSP world to be able to talk about their experiences to help MSPs or to help clients or customers of theirs with any questions they have. We also have Bradford Wilkie, who recently just left senior advisor of CISA. He has joined our Nodeware Advisory Council, and he will be hosting a session for us in July. We're excited about the opportunity for that and to get his perspective on some of the things that CISA is doing to help small businesses with all of the different essentials programs and offerings they have today. Also not on here, but we have a session tomorrow with the National Cybersecurity Center. Before I get to Tim, we have one with the National Cybersecurity Center tomorrow, talking about the things that they are doing to help small businesses, what they're saying from a mid-enterprise standpoint, as well as some of the ISACs they're involved with, and some work they're doing on zero trust and how continuous scanning is fitting into the whole zero trust discussion. So if you get a chance and you go to our event page, you can register for that session tomorrow with Mark Weatherford and Forrest Sente. So with that, I want to introduce Tim. Most of you already know who Tim is. He's the director of Gradient. He refers to it as Kick-Ass MSP. We're fortunate enough to have him with us today just to talk about how the marketplace is maturing, how MSPs are becoming MSSPs, whether they're taking a couple of steps or whether they've jumped in at the deep end to a full solution stack and services and cybersecurity orientation. With that, I will introduce Tim to say a few words, and then we'll kick it off with our first question.
Outstanding. Thanks so much. So as you all can tell, I'm actually joining you from Las Vegas at the Connect IT event, which has been pretty fantastic. There's a ton of people here. So that's, it's a good thing when the community comes together. So pardon the decor in the background. It's not my normal decor, but it is comfortable. So with that being said, I am Tim Coach. Who am I? I'm the director of Kick-Ass MSP, and I am here to, quite honestly, take the experience I've gained over the last 10 years or so. You certainly see the slide there with my giant head on it, by all means. So I started out as a client. I eventually went to an MSP, and now I'm on what's referred to as the dark side, which is the channel. I'm a process as a procedure expert, but really overall, what I've done for the last decade or so is rebuilt multiple MSPs as well as consulted with them to help make them better. Sometimes it's a complete big rebuild, sometimes it's just tweaking, but in an end, I'm here to provide any knowledge I have to the community because we all need to be a little bit better, right?
Perfect. Well, let's jump right in for a second. You've announced a number of integration partners. Before we get started on some of the things about the marketplace specifically, why don't you talk about the 2 integration partners you guys have announced now with Nodeware? You have 3 integration partners. Talk a little bit about how you see the evolution of the integrating with your partners and how that's really driving the maturing process, if you will, for MSPs so differently than what's been done in the past.
Well, I think it's driving a couple of different processes, right? When we're talking maturity, it's not just driving the MSP maturity, but it's driving the vendor maturity as well. So the 3 we have right now, so LineGuard was fantastic. It was a really big venture on our part. We put a lot of time and effort and our own development team into doing that just because we seen the value there, and we wanted to build out something that was really complex. That was Mail Protector, on the other hand, was a totally different story. They seen the value. They want to get back into making sure the community is solid and firmed up and only paying what they need to be paying. So they grabbed our open API, and they're the ones that put the time and effort in, and then they joined with us and we made sure the integration's correct. And then, as you just said, our third biggest announcement was Nodeware came on board. So same thing, grabbing the open API, working through it, breaking it, fixing it, breaking it, fixing it again so it works. But it's all done in a maturity of our ecosystem, right? We talk about this. So the ecosystem consists of the clients, right? The MSP clients. It consists of the MSPs, and it consists of the vendors. There's been a gap there for some time. And there's a gap there between clients and MSPs, and there's a gap between MSPs and vendors. What we're doing is changing the way that the industry thinks, and quite honestly, maturing the industry. We're all working cohesively together to make each other better. Because let's face it, the stronger we can make the MSPs, the better it's going to be for the clients because their businesses are going to be stabilized, and the better it's going to be for the vendor side of the house because that stabilizes our projections and our growth as well. So I think that's where we see both. I think that's where we see our ecosystem changing between the MSPs and vendors. And then for years, well, it's been the last couple of years, we've gone from preaching at the clients as an MSP owner to educating them. Like, what's the next step? Like, we're going to talk today about educating on, cyber, on cyber and security, and what are you doing there? These are all things that mature organizations do instead of just talking at something or talking at a point and never doing anything.
So, first question falls right in line with that from just what just got posted. if they're an MS, it says I'm an MSP that's done primarily IT support in the past. How do I navigate all of the things that are available in security, and where do I get started deploying those to my clients?
So I would tell you, as always, right? Where you got to start is, I would tell you, probably local trade shows or sign up for webinars. You need to gain knowledge, right? And then the question becomes, what are you trying to do? What are the stripes on the zebra, right? If you're a zebra, be a zebra, don't be a horse, right? And then what I'm saying by that is, if you're really good at providing services, if you're really good at the service desk, if you're really good at lifting the stacks, the networking, stuff like that, then that's stuff that you do, right? And what you do is you go out and find partners like Nodeware and a few others out there that we'll talk about here in a bit. And then you ask questions of them. And then what you do is you find that trusted solution and you bring them in to fill those gaps, while you as the MSP is deciding, hey, do I want to become an MSSP? And to be honest, I think people are the MSSP, the cybersecurity, a lot of people are taking this stuff and not really understanding what the investment is in really becoming that. And sometimes you just need to find a really good partner and partner with them and let them do what they're great at while you're doing great at what you do at, which is take care of those clients.
It's interesting. It brings me back to, Alan Alford, who's on our advisory council, used to be the global CISO at NTT. Now he's working for a small organization in TrustMap. And he always talks about the first three legs of the stool, right? If you're a CEO, CFO, COO, board member, or investor in a small to mid-sized business, first of all, make sure you're educating your employees just a little bit about what's going on in cybersecurity, what compliance requirements you may now need to be responsive to. Get started with multi-factor authentication. And then one of the things that we always tell small, organizations and mid-sized organizations is, do you know what devices you have that are vulnerable to potentially get to your critical data? And are you getting an alert when new devices show up on your network? Not only are those the first two things we tell an end user so we can match them up with an MSP to provide them local assistance and support, but we also tell the MSPs and MSSPs, that Nodeware can be the shortest time to a prospect qualification and the shortest time from a cost of sales, because you ought to be able to ask those two questions. And those two questions ought to determine whether somebody's interested. And the third question we always ask is, do you care? Right? Do you care if you know when a new device shows up on your network? And do you care when you know what devices are vulnerable that are connected to your critical data? Because quite frankly, if you do care, it's an immediate opportunity for the MSP. And if they don't care, it's a great opportunity to walk away from that client or that prospect and come back to them when they do care. So
Yeah,
I think
you got to look at it like it's a revenue, right? The opportunities for revenue. You see something pop up that's new, right? So in the MSPs that I've ran and I've worked at, we kind of narrowed that contract down to really be their IT department. So not I'm some vendor you pay, right? But I'm your IT department. I'm going to come in, I'm going to help you, I'm going to guide you, I'm going to do this kind of stuff for you, right? So that's one of the things when you do that, it's how do your contracts work? So for me, for instance, the only time that there was a charge to a contract or an upcharge is when the word new was used, a new user, a new service, a new this or new that. And then typically there's a project involved, but once that project is done, it folds into the normal contract that you have with them, right? So I mean, let's talk about the revenue as well here, because we want to be secure, but we also want to make money. How do you do that? Where is the defining line that says, what service am I providing for free and what service is part of the contract, and when do I initiate a new charge? And most of the time that's associated with the word new.
Yet new is a great way to think about it, right? As you evolve. One of the things, we partner with Threat Advice, and Threat Advice provides a full solution stack for an MSP that's looking to evolve into an MSSP with everything that they have to offer. Maybe you could talk a little bit more about, once you've talked about, right, local assistance, local events, local trade shows, get a little bit smarter. Maybe you can talk about the evolution of, how quickly, how many people, how do you go about it, testing and trying things with new clients before you kind of jump into the deep end where you're going to make it available, or you're going to even offer new things to your existing customer set.
Absolutely. So it really starts with finding the new tech. How do you find tech, right? And how do you get the most out of the time that you're putting into this, right? You can spend hours and hours and hours on the internet researching all these companies and still not finding the right company to work with. The best way to do that is to find a local event. Now, a local event for you may mean regional, right? But find that regional event. When you go to that event, you're going to get more than just security. You'll get finance, you'll get monitor, you get the whole 9 yards. The point being, though, is over the course of a day and a half, 2 days, you're going to get more knowledge on any kind of product, specifically security. Security is a super hot market. There's a ton of them out there. I see them almost every week or every other week when I'm on the show. You're going to see them. You're going to have conversations with them. You're really going to get to vet the product, right? But it's still just you. So step 2 is you found 1, 2, maybe 3 products. You take that back to your office. What you do then is you kind of look at them all, right? You kind of review them all. You compare them side by side. What really fits the best need? What you really want to do is narrow that down to 2, right? And now we're talking this done at the administrative business level with people who are practical people, right? Or, you want to give somebody business that has some business acumen a seat when you're discussing this well, because you got to know how to, charge for this. So what happens is once you decide, like we want to test this one, or we want to test these 2, what you do is you then integrate it into your own world, right? Because you should always drink your own Kool-Aid. And then you find a beta client. So one of your trusted clients that you say, hey, we've got a new feature coming out. We really want to check it out. Or do you mind looking at it? Because what happens is once the technical staff looks at it and they sign off on it, right? So now what we have is we have a discovered product. We have the non-technical side of the house that's reviewed the product. We've had the technical side of the house review the product. Now we're going into beta, and that's really going to give us that live information. Once you're through beta and it's signed off, it's either going to pass, it's going to be a no or no go, as we used to call it in the military. And once you have that, now you got to figure out a couple of things. 1, how do you get it to market? 2, what's my revenue cost? 3, how am I going to go out and upsell 1,000 clients, 2,000 clients, 500 clients, right? Do you do it in a fashion that's, hey, what you have today is our current stack. There's an add-on that's a security stack. Or do you go out and say, hey, just so you know, everybody, your price is going up by $50 a month because we found some new security products and you have to do that. That's very sensitive to how your clients and your partners actually take in that information. You have to be conscious of that. You just can't go out there and do it. We all say we're going to do it, and we all say that if they don't do what we say we're going to, we do, right? That we're going to have them sign a letter of release of permission, right? So basically, they can't hold us accountable if something happens when we've suggested it. 9 times out of 10, we don't really do that. There are a few companies that do, but there's a process, and that process starts at your local or regional shows to get as much information as you possibly can. And then you've got at least 3 months of work to put into that before you start rolling it out. So if you got 3 months of work to put into a product that you're rolling out, what amount of time is it going to take you to build that out internally? Once again, just because you're great at what you do doesn't mean you should be great at something you're trying to do, meaning MSP, MSSP. 2 very different things. Very good at 2 different things. Sometimes a partner's better. Sometimes your direction is to build it out. That's really a cost mind that you got to keep in mind that whole time is where do I put my cost into the resource that's going to be best for not only myself and my business, but my partners.
You know, it's interesting as you talk through that. I was thinking about, you know, if an MSP's clients are now worried about risk management for the first time because of the increase in compliance, maybe the frequency of attacks, right? It causes them to have certain things asked of them that they weren't asked for 6 months ago. You know, I think about the ASCII sessions that we were originally at, or I'm sure the channel sessions that you're at in Vegas. You know, people saying, well, you know, maybe I need a security assessment done, right? Maybe I need to figure out where I am from a holistic risk management standpoint. It's one of the reasons why we partnered with Security Studio, because Security Studio has kind of a light, medium, heavy, if you will, in set of assessments that you can take the nodeware output, drop it into those assessments, and be able to get started on the assessment world, right? Same as the relationship with Gradient was around, if billing is your problem, we want to help you get started with billing to get going with Gradient right away. We've done the same thing. You know, we're going to do a similar program with Cysurance around cybersecurity and cybersecurity insurance as it relates to the MSP, as it relates to cyber liability for each of your clients. And the output of nodeware drops into those questionnaires for you to be able to qualify for that and integrate into that. And we're doing the same thing with SOC SODR. If you're an MSP and you need back-end SOC capabilities, you can use SOC SODR to be able to get all those things that you need at the same time. So we're trying to look at where is the most opportunity for an MSP to get points of leverage, right? Get started. Where's the particular problem they have, and how do we help them get started with it? Because it's all about, you know, helping them grow, helping them get to what are the things they're being asked to do, to your point, that is new, and how do we bring the right resources to bear that it's simple, easy, and straightforward to accomplish.
No, you're absolutely right. That's, I mean, there's good points in finding good partners, and it's one of those things where, you know, you mentioned cyber insurance, and let's talk about that for a hot minute. They still don't have a clue what they're doing, right? So what happened is, oh, everybody's got to have cyber insurance, so they threw that out there, and then all of a sudden everybody started having issues, and they're paying out tons of money. Now they're like, we got to get some teeth around this thing. We got to really put into it. But what they do, right at the end of the last year, their big push was, oh, if you want to renew, you need MFA, right? So MFA is just a piece of the pie. It's an ingredient. It's not by any means a whole slice or anything like that. So we're still seeing an evolution, and we're going to continue to see an evolution of what cyber insurance actually will end up being in the next several years, just from a simple standpoint of we can't keep, you know, chasing our tails when it comes to this stuff, and we got to take security serious. And there's companies out there that can train you, teach you, whatever the scenario is, partner with you to help you get ahead of the curve, right? If you got companies that are fighting you on MFA, then honestly, those companies should have a waiver, right? You've recommended to them, if you get breached and you lose your data, you can't come after me, because 9 times out of 10, whether we like it or not, it's human error that causes the issue within the company. MSPs can't be liable for that.
And to that, maybe a little bit more, one of the things I know that that Cysurance and the others are looking at are also cyber insurance for the MSP themselves, separate and distinct from the cyber liability they're going to provide downstream for their clients. So they get out of the point, the react mode of what are their clients doing as it relates to premiums, as it relates to renewals, as it relates to you know, now delivering on all the requirements the new renewals are putting in place by the insurance agencies.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's, I mean,
We lost you for a second.
It's got to go beyond that. I mean, it's the renewals and what we're doing. I mean, we have to get way better at the security aspect of it, so we are taking care of those clients. I mean, that's That thing I dropped there for a half second.
You broke up for a second. You might want to repeat part of that.
Oh yeah, no worries. I was just saying that, here's the other thing that you got to be aware of this stuff. One of the other things that MSPs aren't aware of that you got to be aware of, right, is if you're going to use cyber insurance, then when that breach happens, when the issue occurs, right, because nobody wants to use the B word, that's a crime scene. So the insurance companies want to investigate that. So our nature, because we want a company up and going as fast as possible, get them back into business, is to fix the area where the issue happened. You can't do that. You negate parts of a cyber insurance policy if you do that. So the question is, now as we're talking about security, we're talking about cyber insurance, what happens when one of your clients has an issue and they can't use that hardware? They can't use the hardware that the virtual server's running on, because they will bring in their own people to look at that environment, not the MSP. They want a third party. So now all of a sudden the question is, how are you going to get them back up and running so they can function from an older set of data, hopefully not that much older, on a different environment, right? So that's one of the things that gets failed to be mentioned in cyber insurance is you got to treat it like a crime scene, and the minute you touch it, you've contaminated that crime scene. And what happens is you end up seeing the penalties being much larger because people are just trying to help because that's their nature.
Let's move on to something that has obviously changed our business pretty substantially in the last 6 months, is this hybrid workforce and people working from home. We provide an unlimited number of agents that people can put on devices that are not on the corporate network at the office for, scanning purposes and vulnerability management purposes. But we now have a lot of corporate devices with people sitting at home in a hybrid workforce where they now want the sensor, and the sensor is also included for free, by the way, but they want the sensor on their home corporate device because they want to know what's on their Wi-Fi, because they want to make sure something on their Wi-Fi isn't getting to that device, getting into critical data. It's dramatically changed our business, not that we're getting into the home security business, but I'm wondering, how has that changed MSPs dealing with their customers, their clients, and their employees that are not all working in the office anymore?
Well, I think the biggest way it's changed is the mindset, right? Because in the old days in MSP, you didn't go to somebody's house. You didn't work on their private network. If they had an issue, you would jump on and do a couple tests. If you could jump on, as soon as you identified it was something internally to their home, you stepped away, right? Like, we don't have anything to do with this. They're their own people. Now what we've seen is, because we really just slammed everybody into their homes, right? And they're not coming back, right? That's the big thing. I mean, I read an article here a while back where, Silicon Valley is trying to pull employees back, and they're like, wait a minute, we don't even live in your state anymore, because they have an opportunity to move out. But it brings in the good question is, one, how are you securing your data? I mean, I'm personally primarily in the cloud. That's where all the data that I work with typically is. But I'm also, 3 days ago, I was sitting in a laundromat in Long Beach, cleaning my clothes, using their Wi-Fi. What is my laptop secure, right? Am I on a secure connection? Should you be doing secure connections specifically for work devices at home? Now we're getting into a whole different thing. They're working from home. Are you paying for their network at home or a part of that network at home? Because now all of a sudden what you have is you have a right as an employer to say, listen, I'm paying for part of this. I need it to be more secure. We're going to put a firewall in your environment, or whatever the deal is. And then you're going to go deeper into conversations about, privacy. And one of the ways that, there's companies out there like Zorus that provide, reality is more like an RMM. It's a monitoring tool for at-home users, right? Like it's certainly evolved in a much deeper product than that. But the point being is we have to start securing those environments. How do we do it? How do we do it where we're very considerate of people's private lives and of their private networks? And I don't necessarily think that, putting a firewall on their, local cable company's connection is the right answer. And if it is, how are you going to provide support so that you can basically VLAN, here's your work data, do whatever you want. It's absolutely monitored. It's part of the company. We're paying for it. And then here's another VLAN that's completely open to the world to do whatever you want to do, because that's your own private, connection. How do you do that? And then the question is, do you do it with the same piece of equipment, or do you do it different? Because there is a mindset out there that if you're on the same piece of equipment and you gain access to that equipment, then you have access to everything in that equipment. It's a deep question. It's one that's yet to be really answered in the industry about how we're going to go about securing all these home users.
Well, it's something, we see it from our clients where they're looking at, it's almost who's the person with the corporate device, right? If it's an executive level, or maybe I had to use the term critical employee, but if it's a critical function where they're concerned about the access to critical data, the companies are actually asking the employee to give us the ability to look at your Wi-Fi. We want to put a sensor on because we want to know that your Wi-Fi is clean, because we don't want, the fish tank from, the bad guy getting into the fish tank, getting into your corporate laptop, getting into our critical data, all of what happened at, the Bellagio and the ransomware attack. But there's also employees that are saying to their employer, you don't get to see my Wi-Fi. You don't get to look at my Wi-Fi. You only get to look at the corporate laptop you gave me or issued me or you bought for me or I had to buy, but you're not getting access to my Wi-Fi. So it's becoming a little bit more of a complex solution for the MSSP and the MSP to figure out how they want to evolve as well.
It is, and quite honestly, I mean, the most rudimentary way to go about securing that, is the corporation pays for a separate data line to go into the home that has a firewall on it that only services the corporate machine. Now, that's a pretty rudimentary way. It's kind of an older way about doing it, but let's think about what we're talking about for a minute. Where does all of our data set, right? We used to talk about the cloud like it was this mystic place, right? The reality of it is just somebody else's equipment, somebody else's location, right? And then we have access to it. So the majority, as we move the industry into the cloud environment, they can access it from any device. It doesn't have to be a corporate device, right? It's like, oh, I left my laptop in the car. I don't really want to go out in the car to grab my laptop. I'll just jump on, one of my kids, Google Chromebooks or whatever the scenario is, and reach out to, because I know the website and I know my username and password. So it's such a more complex issue as we're looking at it, and the solution is going to be just as complex. I mean, we got to keep it simple, right? But sometimes keeping it simple and keeping it secure are two very different things.
Great point. And it's an interesting point about how that's all going to evolve. Let's, one of the other things, as we were talking about services, we have IGI Cybersecurity Services, our sister subsidiary, if you will, that provides services and has been for 10 to 20 years. It's interesting, they bid a lot of these CISO services through our MSPs and MSSPs that use Nodeware, because they don't have those skills yet in place to provide vCISO capability, and they're not sure they want to hire the people to do it. So they like the fact that they can partner with our organization to be able to talk about that. Maybe you could talk a little bit about the evolution and the requirements, both from the client standpoint of what's required, and then how do MSPs want to get into the, CISO as a team, vCISO, part-time IT or security person?
Well, I think once again, I think you figure out what you're good at, and then you take gradual, methodical steps into stepping into that. Any kind of VC level, right? VCO, VCTO, whatever the deal is, right? Any VCIO, VCTO, any of those, right? You want to be careful about that. You want to be methodical about it. It's like one of the MSPs that I used to run was huge into banking, right? That's what we did. It was a high end, high labor cost, to take care of those guys because they have so many regulations. So when you're looking at bringing someone in, you can't bring somebody in that is unaware of the industry you're trying to go after. Now, you can certainly bring in a generic person, but then they're going to have to get caught up on everything related to the specific silo that you're trying to address. So LinkedIn's full of VCs, this is and that. Once it put them through the interview process, check their reputation, do as an ad hoc, take gradual steps into doing it. Because the last thing you want to do is, spend six figures on a person that, although is qualified, isn't specifically qualified for what you're looking for. There's a lot of our MSPs nowadays have, higher end techs, tier threes, right? God levels that have a good security background. So, I'm not saying they're the answer, but I'm saying they're a start to the answer. They really have a good knowledge of what the clients are looking like, where their data is going, what their security looks like, and they just got to put them through the process, right? And there's plenty of software out there that'll, you can go out and run on an environment and it'll come back and say, hey, here's all the various violations that we're finding. And at least that gives you a place to start, right? I mean, I can tell you now, it's pretty rare that someone's Active Directory is actually clean. We all want to say it is. We all want to say we manage that Active Directory perfectly. But the reality is there's people and groups and calendars that have been gone for years and they're still not out of that Active Directory. So it's like, you got to look all over the place. Security is not just one aspect. Being a VCIO or a VCTO or any of that particular conversation it's a much deeper conversation. You're not just looking at AD. You're looking at the traffic. You're looking at how do you access the data. You're looking at how do you access the traffic. There's such a deeper conversation there, and maybe here we can bring in we got a great security guy in Matt Topper. Maybe we bring him into the conversations and he can talk much deeper about, what they should be looking for from a security aspect and a person that can do that for them. But once again, I recommend gingerly and methodically understanding what you need, going with ad hoc, meaning I've got a partial guy that I can get 20 hours a week out of, or 20 hours a month to give me the overview, to at least give me the steps to start taking before you full on engage in a six-figure salary person that's probably going to come in and change the entire way you do things because you don't have their knowledge.
We just got a question, ironically, on a topic I was just about to bring up, was independent third-party penetration tests and independent third-party assessments. It says, as an MSP, should I look to use an independent penetration test or third-party assessment to provide me the credibility to offer new services to my clients?
So let's go with an answer that I love, and it's a bit of an unpopular answer. But if you think about it, it's really kind of smart. Why are we not partnering? We all know a ton of MSPs, right? I mean, we all go to these trade shows, we all go places, we have dinner, BNI, whatever the deal is. We know MSPs. Why are we not partnering with other MSPs and saying, hey, I would love for you to be my auditor, right? You do it for me, I'll do it for you. Maybe there's an MSP that's all they do is provide audits. We got to stop being so scared of having third-party audits on our environments, and we need to embrace those, right? Because you can be doing everything right, but there may be that one little thing that you're just not aware of, and somebody else has that knowledge. That's what we do in the industry. We share knowledge. So I absolutely am 100% in favor of being audited by anybody. That's one of the greatest things I used to love when we got shopped as an MSP, because we were always upfront with our clients. We were always honest with them. They would give us the report, right? And then we can look at the report and say, okay, here's why these things are open. Because a lot of times when you go through audits, and in the banking world, audits and exams are, every Thursday or something crazy like that. There are always exceptions to the rule, right? But if the company auditing doesn't know what that exception is, and you're not working with the auditors, then you look bad. Being upset because someone wants to audit you is a negative reflection of your services on your partner. You should be supported 100%. You know what? I'd really love to have someone. Do you want me to find someone? We can get someone here. Here's an opportunity, because what that's going to do is it's going to show, one, your partner, hopefully you're doing it right. Two, it's going to point out some areas maybe you just need to clean up. And three, there's a very good possibility it's going to turn up new revenue streams, because now what you're doing is you've been telling this partner for 6 months or a year, hey, we really need to implement this. Hey, we really need to implement this, X, Y, Z. Now you have a third party that doesn't care one way or the other coming in, backing up your statement. So I love audits by other companies because, one, most of the time they're just proving that I'm doing the job I'm supposed to be doing. And two, it helps me be better.
And it also shines a light on a number of things you've probably been telling your clients they ought to do anyway, but now they're getting it from somebody else, and it should only reemphasize you're asking them about the right things, you're talking about the right things, and now you have the ability to deliver on that promise.
100%.
So you mentioned every Thursday, right? There's a new compliance, new audit, new set of issues. Can you talk a little bit about how increased compliance has changed the way MSPs need to support their clients and the number of things their clients need to be responsive to their audit committees, to their compliance committees, to their CFO, to their angel investors, to their boards? Can you talk a little bit about how the MSPs have evolved to respond to all the compliance requirements?
I think where we've really evolved in better understanding compliance, right, is just honestly through the pain of not understanding it. We've gotten so involved in compliance now that it's just a normal thing. Now, where you evolve from a mature standpoint is how do you become more proactive in doing that than reactive, right? Well, the bottom line is, like, so when you bring on a new client, if you know they're a compliance-based client, are you still charging them the same onboarding fee? Because you shouldn't, because it takes more man hours. There is not a compliance-driven company out there that is subjective to compliance that takes less hours than a non-compliant company. That's just the thought. That's just how the world works. So are you upping your onboarding fee, right, to account for that? Are you upping your per user price? Because what you need is you need more labor hours, or maybe you need more reporting hours. Maybe you need more dev hours to write those reports. Are you accounting for all those various things that increased attention that partner needs, because they are a compliance partner? And they are different. A banking client is different than a medical client. A medical client is different than a manufacturer making widgets. a manufacturer making a widget that is, let's call it a gallon milk jug, versus a manufacturer that's making a widget that goes in a highly classified helicopter or airplane or something like that. Those are all very different compliances. The base may be the same, but you have to take into account what those partners' needs are so that you can appropriately price that so you don't end up upside down. I can tell you right now, the fastest place to find that is percentage of profitability on contract. And every one of your PSAs should give it to you. But that's going to tell you if you're making your margin. And if you say your margin is, you want to make 35 points, right? That's what you're looking for. And those reports saying you're making 25, 28, 15, that's where you start.
Can you elaborate maybe a little bit more on that, around what you ought to be getting out of those PSAs, and maybe how, with the Gradient solution, that becomes a lot easier?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different things that we can unpack there. So with the PSAs, what I'm talking about is profitability against contract, right? So every contract you sell, you should already know going into any of your clients, new or old, whatever the deal is, there's a certain percentage of margin you want to make. What is that? If you're not making that margin, why? Right? Maybe they're not a fit. Maybe you underestimated hours, whatever the scenario is. But that's going to give you a good indication, right? The other thing you can do is two simple things. One, who has the most tickets from your partners and why? Who's using the most hours of your labor and why? Right? So couple of different things there to unpack on how to become more profitable. Now, what Gradient does is, I call it finding unrecognized revenue and cost waste, right? So, and this is why. What happens inevitably, because PSAs are not easy systems to find a simple report that says, here's what I'm billing this client compared to what the vendor's billing me for. Right. So my favorite example as of late is, Frank's hot dog stand is using 20 licenses of AV, but the vendor is charging 25 licenses against Frank's hot dog stand. Why is that? You need an easy place to see that, because if the answer is Frank actually hired 5 new people and everybody did the work, and you're not collecting revenue against that, that's unrecognized revenue. Services you're already providing, you're not getting paid for. On the other side of that, let's say Frank is at 20. You have 5 licenses from a vendor that you're being charged for that has no revenue against them. That's called cost waste. So what Gradient does specifically is we compare those two numbers. The company, what you're charging your partners for, and we directly compare it to what your vendors are charging you for those licenses. We do that in a very easy UI. It's super fast, and that's what it's meant to do. I want to know how much I'm charging my clients. I want to know how much my vendors are charging me, and I want to know if there's any discrepancy, because if there is, it's either unrecognized revenue, services I'm already providing, I'm not getting paid for, or it's cost waste because there's licenses sitting on the shelf and there's no reason for them to be there. So finding the money quickly, going through that monthly audit task of your review and approve process before you go to invoicing, that's what we do, making that life easier so your revenue's higher and you can directly compare your cash in to your cash out.
That's great. I mean, a great perspective on how this comes together. Getting back to the frequency of attacks, we're now seeing a ton of people requiring vulnerability management, or what we call continuous scanning, during normal business hours, because they no longer are finding it acceptable to do a Sunday night scan, to do a monthly scan, to do a quarterly scan. The requirements from the clients, the requirements from their executives, once again, their board, their angel investors, their CFOs, are now requiring them to take snapshots on a continuous basis to know what's new devices that are showing up. Are you seeing that, dramatically change in the way people are looking at continuous scanning because of the number of attacks?
No, not necessarily. I mean, the continuous attacks are something we've been trying to protect against and been putting various things in place to show for years, right? I mean, that's just part of being a good steward of your partner's environments. Snapshots are always great, knowing where you set in a point in time, finding the right products, right? Alerting as to new units or whatever's on your networking. That's just a no-brainer for a couple of reasons. You're managing that environment. Why is that machine on there? Two, once again, unrecognized revenue. Is that something new that's been put on your network that you should be charging services for? So, the protecting and monitoring of that, we continue to do that. We continue to get new tools. We continue to become smarter on how to do that. But just as important is its potential lost revenue.
Yeah, that's a great point. We're seeing it with the enhancements, we've made, quite frankly, through our partnership with Gradient on the API standpoint. We can now really simplify the output of Nodeware, driving it into a lot of different tools, a lot of different solutions, a lot of different capabilities. It's one of the areas, quite frankly, we're seeing it with a lot of our competitors that are installed at MSPs that are doing, quarterly, monthly scans. They're taking Nodeware at a continuous scanning basis, taking the output and dropping it into their dashboards, and they're upcharging the clients. If you want continuous scanning during normal business hours, to your point, if it's a new business opportunity, if you want scans done monthly, you pay whatever your existing rate was. If you want scans done during normal business hours every day, there is a new charge for that and a new level of comfort that you're getting that. So it's been interesting to watch MSPs do that and use our APIs to fill, if you will, their dashboard, their ticketing system, their billing system through you, or their other vendor systems that their clients are looking at from a client-facing standpoint.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what they're made to do, right? So let's look at some of the products that are out there that do that, right? So your RMM should do that. It should recognize new devices. Now, all RMMs are not created equal. A lot of times we're not seeing networking stuff, right? I'll stand by the fact one of the best networking softwares out there is Auvik. I really like that software. It showed things that are so much more difficult to show in a standard RMM tool because it's basically for the network. So now I'm looking at what's on the network, but I'm looking at the networking devices themselves. And then I was always a fan of having LineGuard in there too, because it provides me several snapshots. It provides me several recovery points. And every single one of those pieces of software, and I'm not telling everybody that's what I prefer, right? Everybody has their own flavor, but every one of those pieces of software has some kind of workflow reporting tool. That's what you're looking for. When you get that piece of software that you're expecting notifications on, what's the workflow? Because it does absolutely no good if it identifies it and doesn't let anybody know that it's there.
No, that's a great point. Could maybe talk a little bit about that. You mentioned LineGuard. Maybe talk a little bit for a second about a couple of the integrations you have. We have a few minutes. If anybody's got any other questions, please submit them now, and then we'll wrap everything up. But maybe talk for a moment about the integrations that you've done and how they're, obviously you're early on it, but how they've helped from a productivity, from a lowering cost, from identifying opportunities from your standpoint.
So they help from a productivity cost, but keep in mind what Gradient specifically does at this point. Like we're a platform that sees more of an ecosystem need than just one thing or two things, right? Our first step into providing all these various different solutions is billing. So that's what these integrations do. Currently, the way that our product works is it hooks into your PSA. It gives you the numbers right out of the PSA of the license you're charging for, and then you have to take a CSV upload and push it up into our system so it gets that number to compare to. Right now, the CSV upload is actually not bad. It's actually a pretty easy process to do. We have some great people that will walk you through it. The automation of LionGuard, 70 plus partners there, the automation of Mail Protector, their products, the automation of Nodeware and your guys' products, right? What that does is those clients, that information, instead of a CSV upload, that information is automatically fed into the solution. So now we're removing yet another step to make the billing process more cohesive and faster. We got to make it easier. It's a painful process. Let's make it less painful. And the more we can automate that, the more integrations we get, such as yourselves, such as Mail Protector, such as LionGuard, right? We got 85 vendors lined up, ready to go. They're all in some sort of process. It came out last month, right? We're currently reconciling over $1 billion a month in billing. That's crazy, $1 billion in less than 6 months. We're reconciling over 7 million SaaS licenses. Crazy efficiency. That's what we're doing, and that's what makes it better. Anytime you can remove manual processes and make it more efficient, that's what you want to do. That's what automations help with.
Perfect. Well, look, we got 2 minutes. Tim, first of all, I want to thank you for your time. Let me spend a second talking about these couple of upcoming events, then I'll give it back to you for kind of a minute wrap up and some thoughts, and then we'll look forward to seeing everybody once again on the 28th. We're doing our Gradient launch and learn with all the Nodeware integration. You'll get to see how that comes together at a great deal of, at a level of detail and a demonstration of how that fits. We also have our live demo and peer Q&A session coming up on the 30th. If you have any questions specifically around the continuous scanning, the normal business use, the no network degradation during that, as well as our ease of setup and ease of use. We'll also be talking about how we're working with 7-figure MSP and a promotional offering that we have for all of their members. If that's a group that you participate in, or if you participate in ASCII, we have a program specifically for them as well. We've got Bradford coming on the 21st to talk about what SIS is doing to help SMB leaders and small businesses. And then we have our session tomorrow on our website with the National Cybersecurity Center and Mark Weatherford and Forrest Sente talking specifically about what they see happening in the marketplace. So please sign up for any of those. We look forward to having you. And I'll let Tim, any closing remarks you have, and then we'll shut everything down on time.
Yeah, absolutely. So, excuse me, closing remarks. We spend millions and millions of dollars every year automating operations on a technical side. Why are we not doing that on the administrative side? Cost waste isn't just a license. It's also labor waste. Time is money. There's better things to do for those resources. Automation, Nodeware joining with Gradient is helping the administrative side of the house. Give people back time. You're going to find money in the process. I almost guarantee you it's either going to be in the form of cash or it's going to be in the form of you're getting labor hours back to refocus somewhere else. We got to stop looking at just the technical side of the house. We got to make the entire MSP more efficient through automation.
Tim, thanks so much for your time. We're at the top of the hour. We'll look forward to seeing everybody tomorrow and on these sessions coming up over the next month. We also have one where we're going to talk about zero trust in August with some authors of some zero trust documentation and what businesses are doing, both large and small, to move in that environment. And we'll talk about zero trust and continuous scanning. With that, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. And we'll look forward to seeing you on one of our next sessions coming forward. Thank you again and have a great week.
Thank you all.